r/tales from tech support. 15 crazy stories from tech support. The screams from the server closet. Today, TFTS, I have a story of horror, of haunting wails from within the depths of a gas station. I recently was hired to work in the petrol industry doing tech support for a payment processing hardware manufacturer. I'm fresh out of training, but I have a lot of general IT, tech, NetSec background, so I hit the ground running once I got all of the proprietary learning done. Our stuff sits between the site's internet router and their payment processing network. We do everything from managing some aspects of the fuel pumps, the payments done at said pumps, inside point-of-sale machines, and the command servers that make them function. Call comes on the line and I can immediately hear a shrill and shrieking noise. A woman is in the background telling customers that she can't process any orders that aren't cash because her computers are down. I introduce myself and we go through the steps where I pull up her site, verify some info, and then I ask what's going on. I already know what's going on, but I want her to say it because the callers often give much needed context without knowing it when they explain why they're calling. She says they had a power outage and everything was offline, but power is back on, and when it came back on, a shrill scream began to echo out of the back office's equipment closet. She is very concerned about the noise and makes a joke about ghosts. I've long since determined the issue, but I don't know how to describe what an uninterruptible power supply looks like to a cashier when almost all of our equipment is boxy with lights on it. I eventually manage to get her to the UPS and she says, "Oh, there's a button," and presses it before I can ask what she's seeing. The UPS reboots and the batteries begin to charge. The site comes online. The otherworldly screams stop. All is peace. I verify she can run a debit card transaction and that all of the pumps are talking to the site server. All good. I let her go, having exorcised the haunting of the petrol station. Dear Director, you getting a new hard drive. I can do this over lunch or you lose the computer for an entire day. Your call. User complains that her laptop is slow. Understandable, reasonable complaint. Hit by the Windows 10 1909 bug which makes any laptop with a mechanical drive unusable with anything other than an SSD because reasons. Common problem, common fix. I pop in a SSD and presto. The machine is usable again. I tell the users, all you have to do is make sure that your files are saved in OneDrive so I can put in a new drive, give you a clean image and you're back up and running in 30-40 minutes tops. Easy peasy, I do it all the time. I have one user who refuses to put her documents in OneDrive. She needs them to be on her desktop. It is the only way she can work, they cannot be anywhere else. Desktop sync isn't enabled on her machine and I can't get her to give it up long enough to turn it on. So I say we can move them to OneDrive, I swap the drive, then we can move them back. No, you cannot put those files in OneDrive. I cannot function if those files ever exist anywhere else, even temporarily. I tell all users that I do not back up laptops. If they are worried about important files, they need to keep them on OneDrive. I had one user who lost critical files because she refused to keep them in OneDrive because it was too complicated, then her HDD crashed. A few months later she dropped the laptop and lost critical files again. After that she started keeping everything in OD. Okay, so if you won't back up your files then I'll clone the drive. Instead of 30 minutes, plan on me keeping the laptop for 8 hours. Or stay with the slow drive. You have 3 choices here. One gives you a faster drive and keeps important files safe, the other 2 do not. Your choice. So she sighed and got all snotty but handed in her laptop. Before I had a chance to start the cloning process I got sidetracked with a major system outage, a CXO with an urgent state required problem, a user who was pissed that I was asking her to walk 20 feet to the next printer because the one she wanted to use was just delivered and not fully configured yet, and copped an attitude because scanning 120 pages in full color results in a file too large to send via email, had 2 walkthroughs with cabling contractors, an HR director who didn't understand why she couldn't access the files that were saved in an underling's personal OneDrive folder after said user left and her account was turned off, a printer that wasn't working until the tech got here then stopped working again the moment he left, had to complete the training of a key employee because the person who was supposed to do the training didn't finish, and a few others things. 2 hours into the 8-hour window I had given the first user, Before I had even had a chance to start on the cloning process that the world will end unless this file is on my desktop. User demanded her laptop back right that second because she had an important meeting. She was lucky I hadn't started yet, so I told her to just take it back. I'll deal with it later. I'm going to miss the chaos. I thrive in this kind of environment. Good luck finding somebody to replace me. So that was my morning. How was your day? Tech support is blind. I'm the family tech support for my parents. My dad is blind and my mom needs to explicitly told to press the button that says, continue, or enter, when trying to use a new app. My dad has a website for his law practice. I've done light work over the past decade to help him keep his website up to date. His hosting service offered him a deal where he can get a new website package at less than current monthly cost, which means he just needs to migrate over the content. Which means I need to migrate over his content. Rather than try to find the information I need in his emails, he figured it would be easier for me to log into his email and get the info myself. It was not. I tried to log into his Gmail on my computer. This device is not recognized. It prompted me to confirm from his phone that I'm allowed to access his email. Of course, I don't have his phone with me. I called him and told him about the security measure and what he had to do. I had to explain about 5 times why having his username and password wasn't enough and that he had to verify I wasn't a hacker. He doesn't get it, but he gives my mom his phone to figure out what to do. I tell them multiple times, download the Gmail app, open the app, press the yes prompt that pops up, then enter the number XX. This turns into a screaming match between my mom and dad. The night is ruined, and I give up for the night with no access to his email. The next day, I decide to try again. He asks me to walk him through what to do again, and I tell him I literally can't walk him through any clearer than I did last night. He says his clerk is able to help him today, and is more technically proficient than mom, low bar. I text him a screenshot of the instructions. He asks me to text it to his clerk. Me. I don't have your clerk's number. Just show it to her on your phone. Dad. I can have her send you a text so that you have her number and can text it to her. Me. Just show her your phone. Dad. She is homesick today, but I can have her text you and you can tell her the instructions. Me. Then she cannot help you today. She cannot help if she does not literally have your phone in her hands. I give up on getting into his email and decide to try a different approach. Let's just see if I can log into his website portal. I have the URL for the portal, but need his new credentials, so I give him a call. Me. I'm trying to log into your website, but I don't remember your password. Dad. It's 12,345,678. Me. That didn't work. Okay, so I'm putting in username XXX, pass. Dad. No, they changed how you log in. Me. Okay, so what's the username? Dad. 123,455,678. Me. Then what's the password? Dad. I don't have a password. They told me I can change it. Me. Bangs my head on my desk until I die, then I need access to your email. I can't change your password without getting into your email. He wanted to try resetting his password himself, so I left him to it, but it's been 20 minutes and I haven't heard back yet. As frustrating as it is doing tech support for my parents, I'm honestly really annoyed with Gmail for making it so difficult for a person with disabilities to get into their account, or technically, have someone else get into their account to assist them. I tried alternative methods to recover his Gmail account, but it literally won't let me in any way without having access to his phone, and he can't do the phone part without help. I'm sure he's as frustrated as I am. When they can't tell the difference, I'm just your average guy and my dad needed some help. Of course I'd help. The issue was that his banking application disappeared from the taskbar. Okay, not the first time he called me when something just vanished from the taskbar. I don't like working with that machine because a toaster has more computing power. Opening anything makes that thing unresponsive for 30 seconds, but I'm just going to put it back quickly and nope. The app was somehow bugged and wouldn't start and it didn't show up in Task Manager. Nothing a quick PC restart won't fix. Yeah, that toaster isn't your latest rig. Just restarting that piece of crap took about 3/4 of an hour. And Windows updates didn't sped up the process. And it didn't even help. Now an hour had passed and I didn't make any progress. The old man had long since lost patience and started to watch his sports game, but unbeknown to me that did turn out into my favor. He stopped looking over my shoulder. After some more fruitless troubleshooting, I made the decision to just reinstall the program. Uninstalled in rain. Wait, where are the original downloaded files? Damn, his download folder is empty. I go to the bank's website and voila, there are only mobile app files and none for Windows. They discontinued their application for desktops. I was out of options now. The original files are gone and I can't get new ones, so I had to gamble on my dad's ineptitude. I created a Chrome shortcut to the bank's homepage and started praying. My dad clicked the shortcut and the app started. He couldn't tell them apart. And that's how you invalidate your service agreement. It's late on a Saturday and I'm trying to wind down into the last half hour of my shift, when I get it, the call you don't want to get when you're trying to get out of the door. Call comes in, and not only does the site not really know how to explain what they did clearly, ESL caller, they don't know why they did it. All I can really get out of them is that after a power outage they can't run any cards. After some back and forth getting their service ID, verifying what equipment of ours is on their site, and what contracts we have with them, I start probing to see where it hurts. That's when I get the full story. The site came back up from the power outage and their POS and commander, server, were back up and running, but they couldn't do any financial transactions. Did they call us? No. Did they submit an online support request? No. What did they do? They unplugged every Ethernet cable out of the router and jammed them back in at random, without noting what was where and where they put them. I look out at the setting sun from the office window and realize it may be a while before I get home to eat dinner. First thing I do is shoot a message to one of my T3 specialists, because part of our SOP is to run situations like this by them. The reply to my team's message is, in verbatim, and then my T3 sends me a snippet of the KB on things that invalidate your service contract, with unguided attempts at self-repair highlighted. I let the site know that we won't be able to dispatch for this one, and that they, in nicer words, fricked up. They don't fight me, but I'm just talking to a cashier, and they usually leave the snarling for their management. I do want to get this resolved, but I can't see what's plugged into where because I'm hundreds of miles from them, and we can't connect to the site because the WAN1 port has some other random Ethernet cable jammed into it. So I call their managed network service provider to see if they can see, well, anything. I tell the router tech guy what happened, and his immediate response is, wow. We end up walking the site through tracing cables together and trying to get the router talking to their ISP so we can log in and see anything, but the site is just so clueless about anything to do with tech, and there are some blatant language issues that are making it harder. Router tech ends up escalating to the site's parent company XYZ Petrol to get them to dispatch an on-site tech, which they'll likely be fined for, and until that's resolved, we can't do anything for them, because Ethernet goes in any port, right? Anyways, the site learned a very expensive and painful lesson today, and won't be able to do literally anything but cash transactions for maybe days. With that, I promptly fled the building before my luck got any worse. Thanks for reading. I really didn't mean to do that. I obtained my certified Novell administrator qualification for Novell NetWare 3 way back when the servers booted into MS-DOS before loading NetWare. I was the systems supervisor, job title, for the UK offices of a South Korean container shipping company. I worked out of the office in the port of Felixstowe, Suffolk. The network was a Novell 3.11 server, Intel 80386 with a whopping 1 GB hard drive, that took care of about 45 workstations running MS-DOS, Windows for Workgroups 3.11 connected on coax cable runs. About a year into the job, and head office gifted us with an upgrade to NetWare 4.1, a CD install. No more swapping out of 25 3-inch floppies for an installation, and I was overjoyed. This network was going to be so easy to manage once the installation was completed. As there was only the one server, I stayed late after everyone had signed out and left for the day. Step 1. Insert MS-DOS Disk 1 and proceed to format the hard drive and install MS-DOS. Step 2. Insert CD containing NetWare 4.1 and run setup.exe. Step 3. Configure the installation once NetWare was installed. Everything was going as planned. Network volumes set up, printers, print queues created, user login scripts and network shares created. Just have the usernames to create and all be done in no time. Started creating usernames is the first letter of first name and then last name. Then about halfway through ran into a problem when several users had same last name and first letter if first name happened to be the same. Can't have this. What to do? I'll just use a different naming protocol. That's what I'll do. Started to delete each username individually, but then thought that's going to take more time to finish. I know. I'll just use the old wildcard, asterisk, so I won't have to fully type each username. Might as well start with the A's. Go into the user directory and type del A, and hit enter. As I did, I suddenly remembered the user directory also contained the username for the system administrator, happens to be admin. I just deleted the only way to manage, create, delete anything on the server. I had a fully functional NetWare 4.1 server and absolutely no way to do anything with it. Only recovery option available, insert MS-DOS Disk 1 and reboot. Start all over again. I managed to get it all completed and running by the time day shift arrived the next morning. 3 truths and no lies. So this is first post on this subreddit. These are all pretty old and a somewhat short, but painful nonetheless. So first one was maybe a year into me work help desk. I get the call and the user proceeds to tell me that she broke the cup holder off the computer. I started laughing as I have heard the myth. She goes, "Why are you laughing? I broke the cup holder and I need a new one." I realized that she was serious. She genuinely believed that the CD tray was a cup holder. It was on a cart and she had been using the tray to hold her coffee as she moved around. I checked later and the tech had closed the ticket stating that she did actually snap the tray off completely. She was using a ceramic cup and put it down too hard and broke it. Obviously a new drive had to be installed. About a year ago I ran into a consultant that had a user do that at one of his old places. Seriously, is this more common than I thought it was? Second story is in a similar vein. User calls about some issue. I tell her to take her mouse and move it across the screen to click on something. She tells me that now her mouse isn't working too. I ask a few questions and realize that she actually had taken the mouse and was trying to move the physical mouse on the screen. I had to explain to her that pointer on screen was also the mouse. She admitted that she was confused why I asked her to put the mouse on the screen, but decided to just go with it. I guess it was just a lapse in judgment, but it definitely worried me. The final one kills me to this day. So when I can in, they were doing the XP to 7 upgrade. This is a massive company, so literally thousands of computers. It got stalled, but they started it up again after I had started. They apparently hired a consultant company on recommendation from one of the higher-ups. They were not good. Computers not configured to connect to the network. No programs installed at all or installed improperly. No printers be connected or installed with drivers for the wrong make, model. Devices not being set up for us to remote onto. They basically messed so often and badly we always knew where they were working because we would get a flood of calls from those floors for all sorts of random issues we couldn't remote on to fix anything either, requiring desktop to come fix it. Well, I thought it couldn't get any worse until one day a user calls up and says, "Hey, my printer is installed as a CD." I thought they were confused because no one could mess up that bad, right? Nope. It was one of the few PCs they actually did get the remote set up on. And yes, they had somehow installed a printer on the computer as a CD drive. The drive was labeled as a printer, and when they turned the printer off and on, the drive disappeared. I called over my colleagues and they were just as shocked and horrified as I was. We also all thought it was hilarious as well. About 2 years ago I actually ran into another like that. I never thought I would run into another printer as a CD drive in my life. And for those curious, the higher up that recommended them, the issue was sorted out and dealt with. Someone learned a new word. Background. I grew up tinkering with computers. I have a degree in computer science, worked for years in network operations at an internet provider. and currently hold a communications director position with a large organization. I also have a large extended family, many of whom still think of me as a child. Visiting some relatives over the holidays last year, and one of my aunts happened to be there. She owns her own somewhat successful small business. At one point, I am asked if I know anything about servers. Since I do, I replied in the affirmative. "Oh good," she replies, "can you help me set one up?" I inquire, with some trepidation, as to what she might be trying to do. There are many kinds of servers, I explain. Really, a server is just a computer providing some type of service. There are web servers, email servers, file and database servers. What are you trying to do? I need a server. I suggested she speak with an IT firm. Quite literally could not pay me enough to continue that conversation. How to invalidate your service contract in 2 easy steps, the sequel. It's a nice and slow day. My site has a clutch of new hires on the job, so our usual constant flow of calls is a little more relaxed. I've spent the day mostly on Reddit, TBH. I'm doom scrolling through some news posts when the call comes in. Caller's a low-level cashier at one of our on-site contracted sites for #major-petrol-company #. On-site means that if I can't fix the issue over the phone, we dispatch a tech. It's a pricey and yearly contracted service that only like 15% of our sites have, as opposed to a la carte calling a tech when needed, which can cost upwards of $2,000 per visit. After opening up the site's account and making sure I knew what equipment they had, I start getting more information as to what happened. Their register had frozen and the touchscreen wasn't responsive. Usually this is just a, let's log into it and see what percentage of the HDD is full. Check the utilized RAM, reboot problem, but the cashier decided to go all Rambo. The register has a side panel used for diagnostics. It has a status message, a soft and hard reboot button, some diagnostic switches, etc. Here's what it looks like. As you can see, the hard reset button is recessed. The soft reset button is visible, easily pressed. But like I said, Rambo. The hard reset button is only for directed use under specific circumstances because it has a 5 to 20% chance of bricking the point of sale machine if used in the wrong status. I should also note that the panel that's opened there is closed by a Phillips head screw and has to be manually opened, so it has to be intentionally accessed. They probably knew of it from previous calls with us where we often have them open the panel to give us the POS status message. The cashier jabs a pen into the hard reset, and when it does nothing, unplugs the power, waits 5 seconds and plugs it back in. At this point, the POS screen is black, the status light is off completely, and the heartbeat is a solid red. That's when he calls us. I let him know that there's a good chance this isn't going to be fixable without potentially reloading or maybe even replacing the unit, but I'll do what I can. I have him unplug the POS. It has a graceful shutdown process with a battery, so unplugging it for 5 seconds does nothing. We keep it off for about 6 to 7 minutes, and it doesn't come back up when plugged back in. I shoot a Teams message to AT3 with an update and he proclaims it bricked. I clarify the hard reset is considered attempted self-repair, and he affirms this. That means not only is the POS dead, we're not going to dispatch a tech to fix it, because they've invalidated their own service agreement. I try to explain this to the cashier, but he doesn't get it. Somehow he had the acumen to open a diagnostic panel, try to hard reboot, and then unplug and replug the POS. And mind you, we have those little Chinese finger trap style locks on the DC power connector where you have to push in before pulling out, but not the basic understanding to get my explanation that his contract is invalidated. In the end, I created a case in their account and gave him the case hash to have his manager call in and get the explanation. The POS? Just another brick in the wall. User thinks I'm with the FBI. Okay, so the title might be a little exaggerated, but this week I was called by one of our most impatient users who wanted me to track down a random person via their cell phone. She just insisted I can somehow do this to a point where it was difficult to even respond. We were like 5 seconds into the call, I barely understood who's on the phone, and she was already reading out this phone number at full speed, faster than I could type or even realize what this is. I told her to slow down and she explained that this number has been calling her work phone and she wants to know who this is and make them stop, her words lol. She obviously answered the phone. According to her, no one was there. It hung up instantly. Yeah, I can see how that is annoying. That's all good. Except for the fact that I have absolutely no system that could look this up. I don't even think this is possible for private individuals and companies without help from the ISP or some court order or something. She was just seriously overestimating our abilities and kept asking for the unknown caller's name. I said if it's not one of ours, company-provided mobile, I can't even find it and can't do anything with this random phone number. I can Google it and hope it's known spam, look at the menus on the phone and walk her through blocking this number, but no. She kept interrupting me, demanded I tell her who this is, so in her mind I just type this in and up comes the name and address of the caller. I wasn't even done explaining how I don't have this info when she hung up, probably angry that I didn't help her because I'm so lazy and incompetent. Well, TLDR user expects location tracking forensics from my first level help desk with a 40-second phone call, doesn't accept that I can't do it. You may have a law degree, but you're still an idiot. Before we start, some context. I work as a sysadmin for a medium-sized law firm. Read. I'm the only IT person for a law firm of about 100 people. As such, I handle basically every issue for pretty much anything that plugs into a wall. I wear every hat from Tier 1 help desk to CTO most days. To set the stage for the type of environment this is, and the type of people I support. The law firm was founded by a single lawyer in the mid-80s, and eventually grew to be one of the largest, our specific type of law, in our state. But the entire operation is still running in exceptionally legacy software, think like. It was written in 1992 and hasn't been updated since. The company that wrote it was acquired by another company in 1995, which was acquired by another, and so on. I think we're 4 or 5 companies at the current point in time. Contacting their support and trying to get anything fixed other than surface-level settings is an exercise in futility. Also, the previous firm founder passed away and the firm was sold to a different set of lawyers that owned their own firm. As such, these new owners are coming in, investing a ton of money to modernize all the IT systems, thank God. But as a result, we're in the middle of 6, possibly 7 different migrations, including our main ERP and CRMs, our phone system, fax system, and email. Relevant later. I have dozens of stories like this, as well as more involved ones, to share after some time working here that is finally coming to an end later this year. And that I hope to be able to find time to share all of them in the coming weeks. What about the type of people I support that I mentioned above but didn't elaborate on? I'm glad you asked. That's where this story starts. You see, lawyers are second only to doctors in attitude and entitlement, most days, and to be fair, not all of them. Most of them are incredibly nice people, but alas, those ones do not make for the good storytelling. Most of them have what I call a learned helplessness. This story starts by one of our attorneys, let's call him Richard, commanding one of his paralegal assistants to come find me. Now, it should be known that I work remotely more than I'm actually in office. I work a hybrid schedule right now, 3 out, 2 in, leaving for full remote at the end of the year, bless up. As such, users do not typically just walk up to me, my office, for issues. They will call my extension, email me, or call my cell phone. Anyways, she appears at my door, quietly knocks and informs me that Richard has told her to tell me that I urgently need to fix his printer as his printer has disappeared entirely from Windows and he needs to print this demand for X client where our fee is going to be Y amount and this is costing us money. You guys know the self-indulgent spiel that users with an inflated sense of self tend to give. So of course, I drop everything I'm currently doing, remember those migrations, and walk over to his office. First thing I do is open the printers and scanners panel in Windows. Not only do all 3 of our managed MFPs show up, but his desk printer does too. And right next to the label that says, Richard's desk printer, is another little label. This one, however, says something different. It says, offline. I notice this and look to my right at the physical printer. I notice there's no LED lit up on the power button. I press the power button. The printer instantly whirs to life and starts spitting out whatever he tried to print 2 minutes ago. I proceed to not say anything and walk out of his office. And that is why, just because you have a law degree, doesn't mean you're not an idiot. Yet another FNG story. I've been inspired the recent posts featuring FNGs, so here's yet another one. Long ago I worked for a company that sold mini computers to various types of clients. One application was sold to financial institutions and we had a proof of concept system installed it on very large such institution in a different city from our office, basically an hour plane ride plus maybe 30 minutes to drive from the airport to the customer. We had been supporting this site remotely, but we finally got some additional business in the area and were able to hire FNG. I was not involved in hiring FNG, but I found him super personable and seemed pretty sharp. We sent him to our home office for a standard 2-week training course and then he was ready to go. One day the test system, the proof of concept system, went down and FNG headed over. He worked on it most of the day with numerous calls to our lead support guy in our office. By the end of the day he was no further along, so my boss told me to fly up the next morning. FNG had a set of spare parts so I didn't have to bring anything. Next day I fly up, rent a car, and head to the site. FNG meets me there. We check in with the customer and start troubleshooting. FNG fills me in with great detail about all the things he did to troubleshoot. It sounds good, but I'm a bit uneasy as it sounds like he really got a bit casual with swapping out parts. The layout on Thesis mini computers was 3 separate chassis, each one with various PCBs plugged into a backplane. There were also some cables that connected some of the PCBs to each other into outside devices. Some of the PCBs were almost identical, so it wasn't unknown to get some of the swapped with each other, but FNG had assured our support guy that he had verified he had things correctly populated. I looked over the system and everything seemed correct at first glance. I decided I would have to troubleshoot from step 1, even though FNG assured me that he had already performed the basic steps. First thing I decided to do was simply reseat all the PCBs since experience had shown that once in a while this was an easy fix. I started from the top left chassis and popped the first PCB out, slid it back in, and stopped. I did a double take and peered at the PCB. It was one of the similar types and belonged in a different slot. Quickly glanced, thought all the PCBs, sure enough, several were in the wrong slot. Clearly this was not the way the system had been configured before FNG showed up. I quietly showed FNG what was wrong and suggested we work through getting the PCBs back into their correct slots, which we did. At one point our customer contact came by to check in. FNG went into a total blast of technobabble, but delivered it in a completely believable manner. I was crouched over the system listening in amazement. This guy could sell shoes to snakes. It took a short time to get the system back to the correct configuration and then we could actually diagnose the problem, which took another hour, I think. FNG was very appreciative, thanked me repeatedly, all was good. The next day I was back in the office and my boss and tech support guy reviewed the problem and how things had gone. FNG was a new guy, so our expectation on his first system problem were not that great. I was concerned that he had clearly messed things up worse than the original problem, and he had not been able to recognize it even with someone on the phone walking him through step by step. My boss, who had hired him, was a bit shaken since he prided himself on doing great job interviews, but we decided to wait and see. FNG was around for a while and we had a few other cases of overlooking simple items, but he limped along, using his great people skills. He really did have a great people skills to get by. Eventually he left the company and went into sales, where I bet he was fantastic. A case of impeccable timing. I'm a full-stack web dev, mostly working on developing and maintaining e-commerce sites using my company's in-house platform. We do support and maintenance as well as new sites and features, but aren't expected to support end users directly. However, we occasionally, or in the case of the site that features in this story, not so rarely, get end user issues forwarded to us if the client's help desk can't fix it. This particular site is healthcare adjacent. I'm not in the US, so HIPAA doesn't apply, but data security is still a particularly big deal for this site compared to some of our other clients, and security of customer data is a big deal for everyone these days. In the far-off days before the pandemic, I'd been working for months on a major new feature that allowed customers to use the site in a different way than before. It touched almost every part of the site and presented some fairly unique problems. We had to request a new feature be added to the in-house platform just for this, which necessitated deferring the major new feature's completion until after a separate project to migrate the site through a major version of the platform. Finally, everything is completed, tested, and signed off. The big release goes fairly smoothly, the major new feature appears to be working, and we pat ourselves on the back and relax. Cut to shortly after we get in the following morning. A customer who placed a single order is receiving dozens, no, hundreds of order confirmation emails. He provides a screenshot of his flooded inbox. Virtually all e-commerce sites have transactional emails, and this has more than many, along with optional text message notifications. One of the implications of the major new feature is that it's no longer completely trivial to decide who should be notified by what method about updates to a given order or account. I've written a nice new piece of code that abstracts away all this decision-making into one place. Obviously, I've got something terribly wrong. Are we sending every email update to the same person, this guy? Worse, are we sending every update to everyone, and this guy is just the first to report it? Either way, it sounds like a significant data security breach on the site that I would least like to have a data breach on, and it's definitely my fault. It's panic stations. I start looking frantically at my new code in the database, while our senior dev gets into the logs. I've just found the mildly reassuring information that the number of emails the customer appears to have received doesn't match up with orders taken since the release of the major new feature, when the senior reports that the order confirmation page for this customer's single order is being requested 10 times a minute. He's refreshing the page 10 times a minute, for an hour. We assume that it's some kind of browser extension or something. A quick proof of concept confirms that you can indeed generate multiple confirmation emails by refreshing that page. Which I hasten to add is not okay, and we immediately put a ticket in to fix it. But this bug appears to have been in the site for years, since before I joined the company. Of all the days for it to come to light. Actually, that probably wouldn't be much worse, because at that time we had another issue in the system that would have caused nearly all emails to fail to send in that case. Apparently projectors have a freeze button. I don't know if I deserve to post here. I don't work tech support. I'm just a computer science major that wants to learn more about computers and stuff, so I try to help where I can. I also recently rebirthed an old computer of mine with Linux. I'm not great at this stuff, but hey, the way to improve is practice. So the projector was frozen on the first side of a PowerPoint. I start by assuming the projector is a second monitor's. I've had minor issues with a second monitor on the past. Turns out the projector has the same signal, so they are both the same monitor, kind of like how two keyboards are treated. I then tried to check the physical connections, and I thought I found the issue. There was a big wire that just wasn't plugged in. I tried to figure out what it was, and asked the professor eventually. Couldn't at first. She was talking to the class while I was fixing it. As it turns out, she has never seen that wire before, so I looked around. I then noticed it was plugged into something with a tag that says, laptop, which has a switch turned to desktop, and a desktop is plugged in. Turns out that's in case you want a laptop to be plugged in, but you don't have to unplug the main computer. Teachers often teach in different rooms, so maybe it's so they can avoid messing with a cool worker's setup. So I decided to check the projector settings, grab the remote, and then just start cracking up right below the main controls. I'm an easy place to accidentally press. There's a big button that says, freeze. I press it, and suddenly it works. I just continue laughing, and just show class that there was a freeze button. 1 or 2 laugh a small amount. I was probably the only person who really found it funny. I was also the only one who spent 30 minutes on the problem. Thanks. Your new antivirus broke a whole division. This was back maybe a decade ago. I had just got my start in IT after being out of college and working retail, attempting to get out. I had been able to join a small 5-person firm that was in the middle of a merger with another 5-person firm. As such, our firm, was taking over the IT of the clients of the other company, Phone Setup. We came into one of Phone Setup's big clients, large manufacturing company in the area that basically everyone in this small town had family working for, Builder, Inc. I was tasked to work with one of the senior guys in to roll out a new AV for all of the machines at Builder, Inc. Mostly this should have been done via GPO, but their old AV, I forgot what it was, had a manual removal process, so I was tasked with going to each machine during someone's lunch break or downtime to run the uninstall steps, reboot, and reboot again so the AV would install. All in all, this was going to take a while. However, not even a week in, when we had maybe 25% of the company protected, we get a call about how the new AV is causing massive slowdowns to all the machines they are installed on. Me, being new to IT, deferred to the senior tech, but didn't think it was ours as full scanning hadn't been enabled. In fact, the only scanning that was done for this test group was nightly from like 8p-1a. Joe, the lead on this rollout, asks me for a list of devices from each division of Builder, so he can pull one from each to once again separate into another group. So I did that and asked Joe what he was thinking. Joe let me know that since these are old, even at that time, 32-bit machines with 2 GB of RAM and XP installed on them, this was near the great XPEOL, that the machines were just slow to begin with and that the users were blaming it on the AV to try and not make their bosses look cheap, lazy for not updating their machines in over a decade. I get Joe the list and he makes a new group with some different settings. We wait a week and have a meeting with the client, including one of the shift managers, Hank, who had been yelling the loudest about how the new AV was making things slow. I don't recall it verbatim, but part of the conversation went like this. Joe: so Hank, how has your machine been running this past week? Hank: fantastic. I told you that new virus software you put on was slowing us down. We need to go back to that old software as it doesn't keep us from slowing down. Joe: are you sure about that? You're absolutely sure that compared to last week everything has been running faster? Hank: yup, it's like night and day, Joe. I don't recall the rest of the meeting, but after Hank left, Joe let the higher-ups know that the only change he did was remove the icon on the taskbar showing the AV was on, and that all other scanning settings were the same. He even brought up the policies he created, and the only difference was that show icon button was unchecked. We did eventually have to upgrade those machines ahead of the XPEOL deadline because of the AV, but that was down the line and after an upgrade and is another story. Nice. You have made it to the end already. Thank you for watching. If you aren't already subscribed, please do so, as there will be more videos like this in the near future.